Geraldine Sundstrom, your portfolio manager at PIMCO. PIMCO is now known as a bond shop, but if you think of equity markets, what's the interesting thing about equity markets now?
Well, at PIMCO, I run asset allocation with Mihir Voha, and we look a lot at equity and bonds and decide, where to be on the capital structure. Equity is a large part of what we do. It's mostly 60% of our benchmark, so we spend a lot of time looking at it. And currently, we are fairly neutral on the market, but we think that there are some interesting spots where to invest currently.
We have the earnings season now, and we have a lot of macroeconomic change. What do you think is the mood on the markets? What's the sentiment right now?
I would say fairly confused, and it really very much depends where you are on the globe at the moment and which currency you are based in. The world in 2015, be it for a dollar-based investor or even a Swiss investor, looks like a big recession out there, with a genuine earning recession, and not only because oil and commodity prices are low, just because the dollar or the Swiss franc have been very strong. That makes it a rather challenging environment for companies based in the US or in Switzerland. However, companies in Europe or in Japan, which had a much weaker currency, are in a much better position at the moment, and you can have interesting investments to be made there on a hedge basis, of course, to not be exposed to weaker currency. So currently we like Japanese stocks, we like European shares if the euro continues to be a weak currency, and hopefully Mario Draghi and his colleague will manage that. But we also see some spots of interest in certain countries in Asia.
What are those spots of interest?
Well, after the Chinese leaving the currency seemingly flawed back in August, there were a lot of fears around Asia and what would happen there. And certain markets like Taiwan, for example, got very sold off very dramatically. And we think that their valuations are very attractive, all the more than the Taiwanese dollar has been rather weak versus the US, and most of the goods that they export are denominated in dollars. So we think that the market there trading at 10-time earnings with high ROEs and high dividend yield is very attractive, again, on a hedged basis.
Turning to Europe, where in Europe would you allocate in the equity markets of Europe?
At the moment, the European market is going through a bit of a challenging phase. It had a very good start of the year, but then the euro weakness stopped and the earning momentum got somehow lost. Another sector which is also a bit challenged is the financial sector. People have great expectations there, but the delivery on the results hasn't been up to the standard. So I would think, we believe at PIMCO that the ECB is going to do more quantitative easing, probably in December or March next year, which will start again another wave of weaker euro, which would be a very good thing for European exporters, and we would look to invest into those. But for now, we're keeping a rather neutral stance, and we're quite cautious on financials.
Do you think the Swiss equity market is a promising one?
Well, I was underweight and started to warm up a little more to it because all the bad news of the very strong Swiss franc and exposure got pretty much priced in the market. And in fact, earnings have held up, I would say, rather well and better than I expected. Now, for me to be more constructive on the Swiss market, I would like to see two things. I would like to see Asia stabilizing and those currencies not becoming too weak. And I suspect that if the euro is a bit weaker versus the dollar, so should the Swiss franc. So in that configuration, I would be more open to go back to market weight and maybe an overweight in Switzerland.
And what is your piece of advice to the Swiss investors?
Being a Swiss investor is complicated when you've had such a strong currency for decades after decades, and the FX consideration should be at the center of all your investment decision. As such, the Swiss being the Swiss franc and being such a strong currency, I was always keep a rather fair chunk of my assets in Switzerland, try to earn carry and avoid negative interest rates by going high yield, for instance. And then look abroad. If the euro managed to stay weak versus the dollar, there should be good opportunity in the US, potentially in the high yield sector there, in mortgage-backed securities. I think if I were a Swiss investor, I would love buying debentures of the Swiss bank, Credit Suisse and UBS, with the new regulation that your authorities came up. Looking very attractive. I would be quite keen on buying the subordinated debt, CoCos, hybrid securities, but even the senior debt.
And going away from equity markets, where would you allocate?
I think I just touched upon that. Yeah. I like the US high yield. I think we have a rather benign view of the Chinese economy, which means that commodities should stabilize and we shouldn't see such high levels of default that is priced in this market. So I'd be overweight US high yield. And also European financial capital securities or hybrid CoCos, subordinated, whichever way you want to call them, but we like those.
Geraldine Sundstrom, thank you very much for sharing your thoughts with us.